Hello everyone. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for coming out on Sunday to support Gershom. I met him on Facebook and we connected. He actually rang me and told me about his story and it was amazing. And then he started to ask me about my story. And when he asked me to come here today, I just jumped and I was just like, yeah, I'm there. Don't worry about it. Doesn't matter. I'm going to be here. So my name's Nadine. I started my speaking journey in January this year. And before I started my speaking journey, I went through a process of having to understand who I was, what I wanted to be, and where I was going. And to be honest with you, it was 14 years in the making. So back in 2013, 2010. And my sister was around 10 years old. And it was my sister's 10th birthday. And we had been at my sister's house celebrating. And I said to my dad, you know what, I'm really tired, I need to go home. And for whatever reason, that night, I didn't have my son with me. Like, my son was 3 at the time, he's going to be 16 in January. And I was driving down my sister's road, and my cousin was calling me. And normally I would say, oh, you know what, I'll answer it in a minute. But for some reason, she just, the flashing of, something said to me, you know what, answer this call. So I pulled my car over, and my cousin was on the phone, and she was like, Nadine, something's happened to Christopher. And I was like, what are you talking about? And basically, my cousin had fallen off a building, block of flats in Isle of Dogs. And everybody said he committed suicide. And the outcome of that was his best friend still haunted by the fact that as he was falling down, he was screaming no. And to cut a long story short, the process of what happened is that Christopher was actually rushed and fell off the building. And so that began, because I'd never lost anyone in my immediate family. I'd always, we were a close-knit family, so it was a huge shock, but there was more to come. So the day before Christopher's funeral, I was at my cousin's house, the same one that rang me, and I was hot combing her hair. And my auntie rang me and she said, you need to come down to the hospital. My 8-year-old cousin had fallen out of her bedroom window in Hackney. And I was kind of like, okay, got in my car, drove down to the hospital. And as I was, so imagine these are the hospital doors. And as I was walking towards the hospital doors, my aunt came towards me and she said, you're too late. She died. Now both Christopher and my cousin Montana both died from internal bleeding. But at that moment, being in shock, imagine it's the day before Christopher's funeral, and I'm back in the hospital, and I felt so sad because at that time I was so numb, I wasn't even feeling sad for myself. I was feeling sad for the hospital staff because the same hospital staff that I had seen 3 weeks before were the same hospital staff, including all the doctors and nurses that were there that day. And I thought, you know that saying, things happen in threes? That was the first time I thought, does this really mean things happen in threes? And then 3 weeks and 3 days later, my grandmother passed away. Now, my grandmother was already in a hospice, but it still came as a shock because we hadn't even dealt with having 2 funerals. I hadn't even dealt with being able to get the concept around my head that all these members, like they're my first cousins and my gran, have passed away. And so I lived my life. Has anyone seen the film Groundhog Day? Yeah. Right. I lived my life for the next 13, 14 years in Groundhog Day. I got up, I took my son to school. By the time I was 30, I had a second son. I was in an abusive relationship and I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't speak out. I was so numb from not understanding that I was suffering with grief but I didn't speak out about what was actually going on in my life. And it got to a point where I didn't decide that I wanted to kill myself, but what I decided is there's got to be more to my life than what's going on right now. But I still didn't snap out of it. I left the abusive relationship for the sake of my son, because he told me, Mum, I'm frightened. So I said, okay, do you know what, enough is enough. If I can't do this for myself, I have to do it for him. So I left that relationship, but I was still living my life on Groundhog Day. And I met my wonderful husband. Yes. And he took the time, something that Paul was talking about with love. When we've been friends since we were 11, right? And when he met me, the first thing I turned around and said, when my friend rang me and said, you know, someone wants to take you out on a date, and she told me who it was, and I said, doesn't he know I've got 2 children already? She was like, of course he knows. You've been friends since you were 11. But what I learned from my husband was he taught me how to love myself again. I can tell you, everything that I threw at him, he took it. And he was like, you can throw it at me because I'm going to help you to understand how amazing you are. Yes. So I want to say thank you. Because he really taught me how to love myself. To the point that this time, literally on the 2nd of October, so imagine the 2nd of October last year, I was picking up the children from school. A week before, my best friend's mum had passed away, so I was struggling with that because I've known her my entire life. And I was picking up my children from school on a Friday. My granddad was in hospital on the Monday, and he'd been in hospital because he's had a trapped nerve in his leg and they didn't know whether they wanted to amputate it or not. Then my auntie went into hospital with her back, and I'm like, okay, I can't deal with this. But that Friday changed my life. I picked up my children from school, my husband was with me, and put the boys in the car, and they've got scooters. So I was going in the back of the boot and I was putting the scooters into the boot. And my husband's like this. But in my mind, I'm like, I was just telling the boys, I must be telling them to sit down, put their seatbelts on. And I wasn't paying attention. Because on the road where my son's school is, you know the small buses? They come down, it's a Halem Ride Road. And I wasn't paying attention because I'm so used to hearing the bus. Like I said, I'm in Groundhog Day. So I'm so used to hearing the bus that it never occurred to me that he was waving his hands at me to tell me there was a bus coming down the road. So what did I do? Normally I would stick my head out, but I didn't. Whatever it was, God, universe, whatever it was, said to me, just step out into the road. You know, there ain't nothing coming. I stepped out and I got clipped, hit by the bus on the corner, rolled against the car, and as I was like this, all that said was running across the side of the bus was, live. Wow. Literally, that was the last words I saw was, live. And I was kind of like, okay. So I got in the car, and Mark says to me, I think I should take you to hospital. I said, listen, I ain't got time to be sitting 3-4 hours in A&E. Kai's got dancing, I've got to go to the hospital and see Granddad, and you can't tell my auntie and uncle that I got hit by a bus, because I'm going to the hospital anyway. And he was like, well, I said, listen, I've got things to do. Live. Start the car, let's get going. So I did. I took Kai to dancing, dropped him off to my sister. I went to see my granddad in hospital, and Mark was looking at me like, I want to say something. And I'm looking at him like, you singing from a little bit of trouble when you get home, so don't you dare say anything. And I got up on Saturday, I went shopping down the market, you know, Sunday, cooked Sunday dinner, did the uniforms, took the children to school on Monday, came back home, sat down, and went into complete meltdown. Because at that moment when it was quiet, when I was on my own, I realized that I wasn't living a life of purpose. I realized how important it is to live a life of purpose, to feel that when you wake up in the morning, you've got something that you want to achieve. Not just for yourself or for your children, but for somebody else out there who needs your experience, who needs to understand that life doesn't just stop because somebody else has passed away. But life doesn't just stop because you're fighting a battle with mental health, because life doesn't stop because you are suffering health-wise. Because I have a chronic illness. I have fibromyalgia, but I don't allow that to stop me. I stopped making excuses that day. I stopped making excuses. I said, I need help. I don't know where the help's going to come from, but I need help. So I did a mind and body program, and I wanted to understand, how does my mind work? How does my mind connect with my emotions? I need to educate myself in who I am. And furthermore, I need to educate myself in who I want to be as well. So that's what I did. So then fast forward into January of this year, I went to a speaking academy, which is where, before I met Leah on Facebook, we met at the speaking academy where we did the same one in January. But the week leading up to that was something, again, I couldn't have foresaw, even if someone said to me, this is what's going to happen. So I was to do the speaking academy on the Sunday, and on the Tuesday morning, my phone rang at 7 o'clock, and it was a good friend of mine called Joan. And I was thinking, right, I'm a Buddhist, for anybody who doesn't know, who's never seen me on my videos or anything. I'm a Buddhist, and Joan's a Buddhist as well. So when she was calling me at 7 o'clock, I went, man, Joan, there can't be no important meeting that you need to call me at 7 o'clock in the morning. I thought, Joan would never call me at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I answered the phone, and she told me that the person who had first introduced me to Buddhism, one of my closest friends, he was in his 60s, she said, I'm really sorry to call you, but Wendell died this morning. Now, Wendell had known my son from since he was 3 years old. He was my son's best friend, in terms of having somebody to guide him, somebody that he connected with on a different level, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And at that moment, I told my son, I said, okay, you're not going to school. We need to prepare ourselves. But in that same moment, I thought to myself, do I go back into Groundhog Day, or do I make his life have meaning by doing what I should do with my life? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because I really did. A part of me wanted to go back into that place of, okay, let's just keep, but I needed to break down. I needed to feel the pain. Like Gershon says, sometimes we need to feel the pain that is necessary for us to push our lives forward, to break us down and make ourselves back up the way we want to be made. Not the way society tells us, right. Not the way our friend might tell us, but the way we want to be within our heart. Yeah. So I made the choice. I was kind of like, you know what? I rang the person who ran the speaking academy and I said, this is what's happened. And I'm sure he thought I was going to be like, you're not coming. I said, I'm coming. I'm coming. Because my friend was Jamaican, and I know he would have been, what do you mean you're not going? What are you talking about? You have to go. Don't worry about me. You have to go and do what I've always asked you to do. Shine like the star you are. Help other people to understand that there's something deep within them that they can manifest to shine like the stars they are. That's what I want you to do. So that's what I did. That was my small victory that led me to where, standing here today, meeting Gershon, meeting Leah, meeting Paul, meeting so many like-minded people who all they want to do is see somebody else have their victory. Yes. Give them the opportunity to have their victory. Instill in them the knowledge that they are great. They are one unique individual, that when you connect with other unique individuals and like-minded people, positivity happens. That's right. Energy changes. You get to change a generation. You get to work with the people that you're supposed to work with. You get to help the people that need it the most. And that's where I had my victory. Because I then realized that in life, from the moment you're born, you're on a countdown, even though you're going up in age. So we go up in age, but really our life is on a countdown. So the point I'm trying to make here is, what are you going to do with the time that you have? Because time is not guaranteed. It is limitless, but it's not guaranteed. So what are we going to do with the time that we have? Every single day, I encourage somebody. Some people I don't know who I encourage, but every single day I wake up with the purpose. My husband tells me off, but he doesn't. Now he probably will understand. Every day I wake up and I post 3 messages. Every single day. Because I don't know who needs that message on that day, but the message is there because somebody needs to understand that they are worthy of having the life that they have, and they shouldn't take it for granted. That they should do as much as they can, as much as possible, to be happy and show somebody else to be happy as well. So that's why I'm here today, because I had 2 events this year, and on the first event, things transpired. It was a great day, wasn't it? It was a great day. But the aftermath of me being able to step into my own greatness and have that victory brought about a negative undertone, which was not of my making. And I stepped back, I started to withdraw, and Gershon called me and he said, don't do that. Don't do that. You need to make sure that whatever message that you need to send, people are able to hear it. So I was like, okay. So when I had the second event, I decided it doesn't matter what anybody else says, their opinion of me is nothing to do with me. It's my opinion of me that matters. Just like I would say to anybody else, it doesn't matter what I think of you. What you think about yourself is the most important gift you can give to yourself, because nobody can take that away from you. So when I had the second event, I wasn't bothered about any negative undertones, because I did what I needed to do to help somebody else do what they need to do. And that's the most important gift that we can give to another human being. So with that, I would like to say thank you very much for having me. Thank you.